If you love ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, and everything that goes bump in the night, then mark your calendars for the West Kentucky Paranormal Expo, happening September 26 in Mayfield, Kentucky at the Mayfield Graves County Fairgrounds. This incredible one-day event brings together some of the biggest names in the paranormal community, including Aaron G. Thompson from Netflix's 28 Days Haunted, Jimmy and Jeffrey from Outlaw Paranormal, The Wind of Rose, Josh Morris, Michael Huntington, Rachel Ravensville, and many, many more special guests and speakers. Your admission is just $15, and that gets you an all-day come-and-go wristband so you can explore at your own pace, browse more than 35 vendors, enjoy delicious food trucks, attend speaker presentations and panels, meet investigators, hear incredible stories, and dive into the worlds of hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, and the unexplained. Whether you're a seasoned ghost hunter or just curious about the mysteries that surround us, there's something for everyone at the West Kentucky Paranormal Expo. Tickets are on sale now. For more information, visit West Kentucky Paranormal Expo on Facebook and get ready for one of the most exciting paranormal events of the year. We'll see you in Mayfield on September 26th. Welcome back to Southern Ghost Stories. I'm Allen Sircy, the American Haunt Historian. You know, there's something comforting about the idea of a potion. A problem is placed in a bottle, sealed behind glass, and handed to you with a promise. Drink this. Someone will love you. Carry this. Your enemies, they can't touch you. Use it correctly, the police will never find you. For most people, those promises belong to fairy tales and old folklore. But Earl Carl Harris was not most people. In 1938, Harris spent good money on bottles of mysterious medicine because he claimed to believe they could control other people and protect him from the law. And when the magic failed, 5 women were dead. Earl Harris was 36 years old when police finally caught up with him in Chatham, Ontario, in December 1938. By then, he had crossed an international border and apparently found work in a garage. Harris had been employed as a car washer before disappearing from Michigan, and detectives used information about his known occupation to track him down. The police in Highland Park, Michigan worked with the Canadian authorities, and on December 9th, officers found Harris in Chatham. There was no gun battle. Harris didn't run. He surrendered without resistance. And authorities, they could take him back to Michigan. The man they brought back was wanted for the brutal murder of a woman named Christina Eastmond. But according to Harris, he had prepared for the police. Before going on the run, he had gone to a voodoo doctor and purchased a bottle of medicine. Harris said he paid $15 for it, which is a lot of money in the 1930s. The promise came with the bottle. It was simple. The medicine would keep him safe from the police. Harris believed the potion would protect him. The detectives found him anyway. When Captain Charles Cook of the Highland Park Police asked Harris about the medicine, Harris gave a simple and almost casual response. "I guess it didn't work." That would have been strange enough on its own. A suspected murderer trusting a bottle of voodoo medicine to hide him from the law was sort of story newspapers loved. But as detectives began talking to Earl Harris, the case became much darker. Because Christina Eastmond, Harris admitted, was not the first woman he had killed. She was the 5th. To understand how Earl Harris ended up in Canada with a useless bottle of protective medicine, you have to go back more than a decade to Missouri and a woman whose name is largely missing from all the old newspaper accounts. She was Harris's wife. In 1926, Earl Harris killed her in St. Louis. We don't know much what happened, but we do know there was some kind of argument, and it escalated, and it wound up with her dead. And they say that Harris spent 8 years behind bars before he was finally paroled. He was free again, and 2 years later, according to his confession, 3 more women were dead. So in 1936, Harris is back in Missouri, this time around Montgomery City. And once again, the details no one really knows are kind of sketchy. Harris was vague when detectives questioned him about the 3 women. but he admitted killing all of them during a violent rage. The reason was absurd in its simplicity. One of the women Harris said refused to go hunting with him. There was an argument, and then Harris killed 3 women. Afterward, he fled to Moberly, Missouri, and there, according to the story he told police, he killed another woman following an argument over money. The accounts are somewhat fuzzy, but some said Harris confessed to killing his wife and 4 other women, making 5 victims in all. Others grouped 3 of the women together in the 1936 Missouri killings and described Christina Eastmond as his final victim. What is clear is that Harris himself reportedly admitted responsibility for 5 deaths, and yet somehow he was free in Michigan by 1938. By then, Harris had found his way to Highland Park, a small city surrounded almost entirely by Detroit. This was a Detroit of the late Depression, a city built around factories and automobiles, where thousands of people had arrived looking for work. Highland Park had been transformed by the automobile industry years earlier, and for a man like Earl Harris, a job washing cars offered a way to survive. Harris rented a room at 354 Pasadena Avenue, and the owner of the home was Christina Eastmond. Christina was not simply Harris's landlady. She was also described as a welfare investigator or a welfare worker in Highland Park. Her job would have placed her in contact with people struggling through the final years of the Great Depression. She was accustomed to dealing with difficult circumstances. She probably heard desperate stories and stepped into homes where families were barely holding things together. At some point, Earl Harris became interested in her. And exactly what kind of relationship existed between Harris and Christina, no one really knows. The newspapers described her as a quote-unquote sweetheart and also a landlady to others. Harris claimed that there was something more between them, but whatever he believed, Christina apparently did not return his affection the way he wanted. Harris was spurned. And that was when voodoo entered the picture. Detroit police in the 30s were already familiar with stories of strange spiritual practices and secret religious groups. The newspapers of the period often used the word voodoo carelessly, applying it to a wide range of African American folk beliefs, spiritual practices, contra traditions, and religious movements. The language was usually sensational and borderline racist. But police had investigated at least one disturbing case in Detroit the previous year when a black woman reportedly claimed she was going to be sacrificed to Allah in a pot of boiling water by members of a cult. So when Earl Harris began talking about witch doctors, magic medicine, and love potions, the newspapers were ready to listen. Harris claimed Christina Eastmond had placed a spell on him. And according to the story he later told the court, Christina had mixed a mysterious love potion into his food. Harris believed the potion had affected him. He claimed she had put something on him, something that altered his mind and drew him toward her. She became irresistible to him. And whether Harris genuinely believed this, no one knows, but he decided to fight magic with magic. Somewhere along 8 Mile Road in Detroit, Harris said there was a voodoo doctor. The newspaper sometimes called that person a witch doctor. Harris went there looking for help. He wanted something that could break Christina's hold over him, or perhaps something that could give him control over her. He purchased several bottles of some kind of mysterious elixir. One was known as John the Conqueror, and the name itself has deep roots in African American folklore and conjure traditions. High John the Conqueror appears in stories as a clever folk hero, a figure associated with survival, resistance, luck, and overcoming impossible situations. Over time, the name also became connected to roots and preparations used in voodoo practices. But the papers weren't interested in culture history. They were interested in Earl Harris. Harris claimed the potion cost $25 a bottle. Another account said he paid $15 for medicine. Either way, he was spending serious money on these promises of the voodoo doctor. And those promises were extraordinary. According to Harris, the medicine was supposed to make people do anything he wanted them to do. It was also supposed to protect him from police. Well, first, Harris wanted Christina. He used the potion. But nothing happened. Christina Eastmond remained uninterested. The elixir failed to win her affection. And Harris became angry. Years later, it would be easy to describe what followed as a crime of passion. Newspapers often use a phrase like that when men murdered women who rejected them. But there was nothing romantic about what Earl Harris did on October 17, 1938. Christina Eastmond was inside her home on Pasadena Avenue, the house where Earl Harris had been living as a lodger. At some point, Harris confronted her. He had a knife. According to Highland Park police, Harris stabbed Christina 37 times. 37 times. It's difficult to imagine the violence required to inflict that many wounds. That wasn't just a single impulsive strike followed by immediate regret. The attack continued over and over again. But Harris wasn't finished. After stabbing Christina, he picked up a chair. He used it to crush her head. Christina Eastmond, the welfare worker who had allowed Earl Harris to live in her home, she was dead. Harris fled. Later, he tried to explain the murder with voodoo. He claimed Christina had used a love potion on him. He said he had gone to the voodoo doctor for his own elixir. And when the potion failed to get Christina's attention, Harris lost control. He told the police he went crazy. Then he grabbed the knife. That was his explanation. But Earl Harris had a problem. Christina wasn't the first woman he had killed. She was simply the latest. A man who had already killed his wife and later admitted killing 3 other women could hardly blame one failed love potion for violence. Still, Harris remained fascinated with the idea that magic could solve his problems. Christina was dead. The police, they were going to be looking for him. So Earl Harris went back to find another bottle. And this time, he didn't need anything for love. He needed protection. And Harris brought what he described as a voodoo medicine from a witch doctor. And the seller allegedly guaranteed the potion would keep him safe from police. Perhaps Harris was told to carry it. Perhaps he drank it. The newspapers never really explained what happened. But Harris apparently trusted the promise enough to run. And he fled north across the border, right into Canada. For several weeks he disappeared, and Highland Park detectives began tracing him. Because he was a car washer, they knew where to look. On December 9th, they found him in a garage. The potion didn't make him invisible. It didn't confuse the detectives. It didn't stop Canadian authorities from helping the Highland Park police. And it didn't keep the handcuffs off of him either. Earl Harris surrendered, and soon he's back in Michigan. And that was when the confession began. Captain Charles Cook announced that Harris admitted killing Christina Eastmond. And then he began talking about the others. His wife in St. Louis, the 3 women killed in a rage in 1936 in Missouri, and Christina, 5 women. Harris was 36 years old. The newspapers quickly transformed into, quote-unquote, the Voodoo Slayer. His photograph appeared beneath headlines describing voodoo killings and failed elixirs. Reporters emphasized his beliefs in divine powers, witch doctors, and secret cults. Harris told police the voodoo doctor had sold him medicine. It was going to protect him from being arrested. I guess it didn't work. It's a chilling line, not because it sounds supernatural, but because of how ordinary it sounds. There was no apparent horror in the statement, no mention of Christina Eastmond, no concern for the women Harris said he had killed. Just disappointment in a product that had failed to perform as advertised. And the murder case moved quickly. Earl Harris pled guilty to first-degree murder in the deaths of Christina Eastmond. The decision spared the court from a lengthy trial, but Harris was still given an opportunity to explain himself before a judge. And once again, he talked about voodoo. Harris claimed Christina had placed him under a spell. She had mixed a mysterious love potion into his food. He had gone to the voodoo doctor on 8 Mile Road and purchased the bottles of John the Conqueror. The potion, it cost $25, and it was supposed to make people do anything you wanted. But when the medicine failed to make Christina respond to him, Harris said he lost his mind, and he stabbed her to death. As Harris told his story, the court apparently saw little evidence of remorse. And one account said he was just quote-unquote indifferent to his fate. You gotta think, he had already spent years in a Missouri prison. Now, as he stood before a Michigan judge, he repeatedly made one thing clear. He didn't want to go back to Missouri. The judge sentenced Earl Harris to life in prison in the Michigan State Prison at Jackson. Before imposing the sentence, the judge reportedly reminded Harris of something important. Harris was fortunate. Michigan had no capital punishment. Had the crime occurred somewhere else, a confession of first-degree murder might have carried a very different ending. There'd be no gallows for Earl Harris, no electric chair. Instead, the man who claimed to have killed 5 women disappeared behind the walls of the Michigan prison system. And the bottles of medicine that supposedly guided his final crime became little more than strange details in an already horrifying story. It'd be easy to tell the story of Earl Harris as a tale about voodoo. That's how the newspaper sold it. The Voodoo Slayer, the witch doctor, the love potion, John the Conqueror, the magical medicine that could make people obey, the potion that could hide a murderer from the police. Those details are sensational. They're also distracting, because beneath the stories of spells and elixirs was something much, much simpler. Earl Harris was a violent man. He killed his wife. He spent time in prison and been released. Voodoo didn't make Earl Harris stab Christina Eastmond 37 times. A failed potion did not put a knife in his hand. And no magic powder forced him to crush her head with a chair. Those were Earl Harris's choices. But maybe Harris needed the potions to believe something else. If Christina had placed him under her spell, then his obsession, it wasn't his fault. If the medicine failed, then his rage wasn't his fault. If a voodoo doctor promised to protect him from police, then perhaps he wouldn't have to face the consequences of what he had done. Every bottle gave Earl Harris something or someone else to blame. Until December 9, 1938. That's when the detectives found him in that garage in Ontario. The medicine failed. The police were standing in front of him. And for once, Earl Harris seemed willing to admit the obvious. I guess it didn't work. So have you guys got my latest book yet? Pistols of Red River. Man, it's a whole lot of fun. It's a true story of Andrew Jackson and a duel he was involved in all the way back in 1806. 1806, man, it was a wild time to be alive. The book's available on Amazon, and you can read it on Kindle. In fact, if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free, and it's hard to beat free. And actually, all my books are on Kindle Unlimited. Like if you want to read Southern Ghost Stories, Downtown Nashville, or Fear and Folklore, American Witches, The Sausage King, Hex, all my books are on there. I got 40 books, and I have more on the way. There's going to be an announcement, I think next Thursday. I'm going to do like a mini podcast talking about the new books. I was at an event 2 weeks ago, and someone asked about new books coming out. And yes, new books are coming in September. I'm really excited about it. So a little peek under the tent, but I'll go more in detail next week about it. And also, we're trying to reach 150 Apple Podcast reviews and 1,000 Spotify reviews for Halloween. If you've enjoyed the show, take 60 seconds to leave a review. It really helps more people discover Southern Ghost Stories. And Apple uses ratings and reviews to decide which shows to recommend. A quick review helps other folks who love folklore and haunted history find the show. Have you guys been to Monster City Madhouse yet? MonsterCityMadhouse.com. The new shirt, man, is a whole lot of fun. Features a mashup of Tombstone and the Universal Monsters. This Monster City Madhouse exclusive shirt's made from a comfortable 60-40 polyester cotton blend. With quotes like, I'm your Huckleberry and Hell's coming with me, you'll be ready to unleash monster justice. And use promo code SAVE10 at checkout. That's right, promo code SAVE10 get you 10% off your order at MonsterCityMadhouse.com. And be sure to like Southern Ghost Stories on Facebook and Instagram. And send us your questions, southernghoststories@gmail.com for a future Q&A episode. That's right, if you have a question you want me to answer or just a comment for the show, southernghoststories@gmail.com. And speaking of social media and all that, I run Tennessee Hauntings on Facebook. It's a group for paranormal enthusiasts, ghost stories, Galvanism, Frankenstein stuff, grave robbing, just all kinds of wild, weird stuff that pertains to the state of Tennessee. Last month, we had 500,000 viewers. I mean, that's nuts. Over 500,000 people were viewing the site, reading the articles I put up. So just be sure to follow me over there, Tennessee Hauntings. I post regularly, and I share stories and pictures there every day, sometimes more than once, usually twice. Anyway, thanks for listening to Southern Ghost Stories. I'm Allen Sircy, the American Haunt Historian, and I'll see you guys back on Friday. If you love ghost stories, folklore, and all things mysterious, you need to make a trip to Haunted in downtown Tullahoma, Tennessee. Just a short drive from Nashville, this family-owned Gothic shop is filled with the strange, unusual, and downright fascinating. This isn't a big box store full of mass-produced decorations. Haunted specializes in handmade curiosities, Gothic decor, metaphysical supplies, green witchcraft essentials, and unique pieces created by independent artists. Whether you're decorating or just looking for something you won't find anywhere else, Haunted is worth the trip. Visit them on 125 West Lincoln Street in Tullahoma, or shop online at hauntedstore.net. That's right, hauntedstore.net. Haunted, curated for the strange and unusual. Monster City Madhouse, a year-round online store full of Halloween and classic horror shirts, with an emphasis on the vintage look. Use code SAVE10 for 10% off your order. MonsterCityMadhouse.com. Free shipping and financing's available.